At precisely 600 hours, the skies over Earth tore open. Great ripples of energy spread across the heavens, followed by an earth-shaking boom. Across the globe, military radar systems screamed in panic as thousands of alien warships emerged from subspace, each one larger than the mightiest battleships ever built by humanity. These were no ordinary invaders. They were the Zyrith, a technologically advanced and ruthless alien empire whose sole purpose was domination. Captain Alexia Kor stood at the command center of the Earth Space Command, her eyes fixed on the massive screen before her. The symbols on the radar shifted from blue to red as the Zyrith fleet arrived in a terrifying formation. The screen blinked with incoming signals. Every nation's satellite grid had been wiped out within moments. She knew that within hours, Earth's defenses would be crushed beneath the weight of the alien onslaught. "We've got less than 20 minutes before they hit orbital stations," Captain Lieutenant Ramirez, her tactical officer, warned. "Our defenses are outgunned. The Zyrith are well beyond us." Kor clenched her jaw. She had trained for years for a situation like this, but nothing could have prepared her for the overwhelming despair that gripped her as the reality of the invasion hit. With Earth's most powerful warships crippled, she knew the enemy had already begun their assault on civilian targets. The capital cities, New York, Paris, Tokyo, would be obliterated in a matter of minutes. But there was no time to mourn. "Prepare the fleet. We're engaging them head-on," she ordered, her voice cold with resolve. "We may not have the firepower, but we have the will to fight. Let's show them the price of underestimating humanity." Her decision was not without protest. The officers around her hesitated. Many were terrified. Some doubted the survival of humanity, let alone their chances in a fight like this. However, in Captain Kor, they saw the spark of something they thought had died with Earth's crumbling governments: hope. The command deck erupted with activity as the human fleet, scattered and desperate, moved into formation. Kor's flagship, the Vanguard, was one of the few ships that could still engage, and it was already heading toward the heart of the Zyrith fleet. A makeshift fleet of Earth's best warships, hastily retrofitted with alien technology and piloted by soldiers with nothing left to lose, followed in close formation. "On my mark," Kor called out as the vast silhouettes of the Zyrith ships loomed closer. "All units, prepare to engage. This is for Earth, for our future." The order was given. Energy shields flared to life across the human fleet as they shot forward, weapons charging. The Vanguard fired first, its cannons punching a hole in the advancing Zyrith forces. But it was a futile gesture. The Zyrith responded with overwhelming force. Laser blasts streaking through space, ripping apart the human ships in mere seconds. The Vanguard rocked violently as it was hit, but Kor didn't flinch. Her command was unwavering. "Keep fighting. For every second we hold them off, more survivors can escape." But it wasn't enough. The humans, despite their bravery, were no match for the sheer firepower of the Zyrith. The sky above Earth began to burn as the alien fleet descended to the surface, deploying ground forces that were quick to overwhelm every resistance. Humanity was on the verge of extinction, but there was one thing the Zyrith hadn't counted on: the spark of resistance that was beginning to grow from the ashes of their invasion. Kor, her flagship severely damaged, looked to the horizon. Earth might have fallen, but humanity's spirit had not. They would survive. They would rebuild. And if Kor had anything to say about it, the Zyrith would regret ever setting foot on Earth. In the aftermath of the Zyrith invasion, humanity had been brought to its knees. Major cities were nothing more than burning husks, and the majority of Earth's military forces had been wiped out in the opening hours. The survivors, those who weren't captured or killed in the initial bombardment, were scattered, living in hiding, fighting to stay one step ahead of their alien oppressors. Captain Alexia Kor stood among them, in the shadow of a decimated London, in what had once been an underground resistance bunker. The place was now their makeshift command center, the flickering lights barely enough to ward off the gloom that seemed to consume everything. The walls were lined with makeshift maps, hastily drawn by the few surviving strategists, detailing Xyrath movements and potential pockets of resistance. But Kor's focus was elsewhere. "We've got no choice," Kor muttered as she studied a holographic map of what remained of Earth's military strongholds. "The Xyrath are methodical. They'll hunt us down, one by one, until there's no one left to resist." Lieutenant Ramirez, who had managed to survive the first wave with her, looked grim as he shuffled through reports on his console. "We've already lost contact with most of our allies in orbit. Our satellites are down. Earth's communications grid is a mess. But there are still pockets of humanity fighting," Kor replied, her voice growing stronger. "We still have hope, and as long as we do, we fight." The resistance movement was fragile, divided, scattered, and severely outnumbered. But Kor knew that it was the only chance Earth had left, and she had a plan. Kor had heard whispers of a secret faction of alien outcasts, Xyrath soldiers who had defected from their empire, disgusted by the cruelty they had witnessed in their homeworld's campaigns. They were considered traitors by their kind, and rumors said they were hiding deep within the broken remnants of Earth's cities. If Kor could find them and forge an alliance, they could turn the tide of the war. But it wouldn't be easy. The Xyrath had eyes everywhere, and these defectors were likely being hunted as much as humanity was. Still, if they could find even one defector willing to stand with them, it would be enough to spark a full rebellion across the galaxy. Kor and her remaining forces prepared for the risky operation. They would infiltrate an abandoned military research facility in the heart of Paris, where a key contact had reportedly located one of the defectors. The mission would be dangerous. The Xyrath were everywhere, and their soldiers, once humans now bent to their will, had become terrifyingly efficient hunters. But there was no time to waste. Earth's survival depended on this fragile hope. As they moved into position, Kor couldn't shake the feeling of looming doom. The devastation around her, deserted streets, ruined skyscrapers, the smell of smoke lingering in the air, reminded her of just how much Earth had lost. Yet she couldn't afford to dwell on the past, not when the future of humanity was hanging by a thread. The team approached the old facility with caution, every shadow a potential ambush. Kor's heart pounded, not out of fear for her own life, but for the lives of the thousands who depended on her success. They moved silently through the ruins of Paris, staying low and alert, eyes darting around for any sign of Xyrath patrols. Just as they reached the entrance to the facility, Kor's radio crackled to life with a transmission from an unknown source. It was brief, but its message was unmistakable. "Captain Kor," the voice said, calm and precise, "we know you're coming, and we've been waiting for you." The line went dead. Kor's pulse quickened, her eyes narrowing. There was no turning back now. Whether they were allies or enemies, they had no choice but to follow through. With a deep breath, she gave the signal, and her team advanced, the air thick with anticipation. The spark of hope had been lit, and there would be no stopping it now. The old facility was eerily quiet, its broken windows and rusted doors a testament to the devastation that had swept across Earth. As Captain Alexia Kor and her small team moved deeper into the shadowy interior, the silence pressed against them like a living thing. The faint hum of old machinery buzzed in the distance, a haunting reminder of a time before the invasion, when humanity had been on the brink of the stars. "Keep your eyes peeled," Kor whispered, her voice a sharp contrast to the stillness around them. "We don't know how many are inside." Lieutenant Ramirez, his rifle ready, nodded. "Understood, Captain. No mistakes." The team's boots echoed against the cracked concrete floor as they made their way through the maze of abandoned halls, where faded signs still hung on the walls, symbols of a civilization that once thrived. Despite the constant tension in the air, Kor's mind remained focused on the mission. They couldn't afford to fail. The Xyrath had begun their relentless sweep of every city on Earth, and humanity's last hope rested on finding these defectors. They reached the inner chambers of the facility, the air growing colder as they moved past broken doors. Kor held up her hand, signaling her team to stop. They had reached the heart of the facility, the very place where the last traces of advanced alien technology had been hidden. It was here that they would find the one man. No, the one alien who might turn the tide in humanity's favor. The sound of footsteps suddenly broke the silence, sharp and deliberate, growing closer. Kor's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm, and her team readied themselves for the worst. But just as they prepared for a confrontation, the dim light above them flickered on, revealing a figure in the shadows. It was not a Zareth soldier, nor was it a human resistance fighter. The figure was tall, with smooth blue skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. His features were sharp and angular, a reminder of the alien race that had decimated Earth. Yet there was something in his gaze, a kind of haunted sorrow, that set him apart from the monsters who had ravaged her planet. The figure stepped forward, his movements fluid but cautious. "Captain Kor," he said, his voice calm but filled with quiet intensity. "I knew you would come." Kor didn't lower her weapon. "You're a Zareth," she stated, her voice cold. "What's your game? Are you leading us into a trap?" The alien's expression softened, and he raised his hands, a gesture of peace. "I am no longer part of their empire," he explained, his voice steady despite the tension. "I once served in their military, but after witnessing their cruelty, I defected. I've been waiting for someone like you, someone who can help end their reign." Kor studied him for a moment, her mind racing. This was the moment they had hoped for, but it felt too surreal. Could they really trust this alien? After all, they had witnessed firsthand the horrors the Zareth were capable of. The memory of their invasion was still fresh, the image of broken cities and fallen soldiers never far from her mind. "We don't have time for games," Kor said, still cautious. "If you're serious about helping us, then prove it." The Zareth defector didn't flinch. "I can help you access their communications networks, Captain. I know how they think, how they fight. I can guide your forces through their strongest defenses." Kor's heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. A chance to strike back, to fight against the Zareth with the knowledge of their own people. But there was a part of her that still couldn't fully trust him. "You'll have to prove your loyalty," Kor said, her voice unwavering. "One wrong move, and I'll end you." The defector nodded. "I understand. I have nothing left to lose." Kor looked to her team, who gave her silent nods of agreement. The decision had been made. She extended her hand, her grip firm. "Welcome to the Resistance." The Zareth defector, his name now revealed as Varian, smiled, a slight, knowing gesture. "You've made the right choice. Together, we'll change the course of this war." Kor glanced at the door behind him, knowing that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. But with Varian's knowledge and their growing strength, they now had a fighting chance. The Resistance had a new ally, but their mission was far from over. In the days that followed their alliance with Varian, the Zareth defectors, led by their former commander, began sharing invaluable intelligence. Kor's small team now had the upper hand, at least for the moment. With the Zareth's strategic communications network compromised, Kor saw an opportunity to strike back. Varian had revealed that a critical Zareth base lay on the outskirts of what was once a thriving megacity in the heart of the North American continent. The base housed not only a massive armada of warships, but also a key element of their control over Earth's remaining communications and military systems. If they could take it down, they could destabilize the Zareth forces on Earth long enough to allow humanity's scattered remnants to regroup. "We hit them hard and fast," Kor said, studying the holographic map spread across the dimly lit table in their command bunker. The Resistance had grown over the past few days, but it was still a far cry from the might they once wielded. "Varian, you said there are multiple entrances to this base. How can we get in undetected?" Varian, standing with his arms folded, his eyes glowing faintly in the low light, nodded. "The Zareth are meticulous, but they rely too much on their technology. They've underestimated the human spirit. There's an underground tunnel system near their perimeter. It's heavily guarded, but you should be able to infiltrate before they realize what's happening. Ramirez, still skeptical but ever loyal, stepped forward. You're sure? Last time we hit a Zyrith stronghold. It didn't go so well. Kor locked eyes with her lieutenant. We won't make the same mistake twice. We've learned, and now we're going to use it. We take the fight to them, and we hit them with everything we've got. The team was ready. Despite their ragged appearance and the weight of the war pressing on their shoulders, there was a fire in their hearts. This was more than just a mission. It was their declaration of war, their fight for survival. Humanity would no longer cower in fear. They would rise. As the team prepared for the assault, Varian gave them a final piece of crucial information. The Zyrith have a commander stationed at the base, a ruthless general named Tar. If you can eliminate him, it will create enough chaos for you to escape. He's a warlord who controls the Zyrith's military operations here on Earth. Taking him down will disrupt their leadership and give you an advantage. Kor nodded. Tar's our target. The night before the strike, the team gathered in silence, each soldier lost in their own thoughts. Captain Kor stood on the balcony of the makeshift command center, looking out over the ruined city. The stars were barely visible through the haze of smoke and debris, a constant reminder of the devastation that the Zyrith had wrought. Yet, she found herself strangely calm. The human race had been pushed to the brink, but it had survived. And now, with every step they took, they were fighting back. We can do this, Kor whispered to herself. We will do this. The next morning, they set out at dawn, moving through the wasteland toward the Zyrith base. Their journey was treacherous, but with Varian's guidance, they avoided the most dangerous patrols. By midday, they had reached the outskirts of the facility. The Resistance's recon team had already secured the perimeter, marking their route and ensuring no surprises. Kor's heart pounded as they entered the tunnels beneath the base, the walls cold and damp with the remnants of the facility's ancient construction. They moved in near silence, every footstep echoing against the stone. But as they approached the heart of the base, Kor's pulse quickened. They were getting close to the Zyrith's nerve center. Then, just as they neared the command room, the sound of footsteps reverberated down the tunnel. Zyrith soldiers. The unmistakable sound of their heavy boots struck terror into the hearts of the Resistance, but Kor had already made her decision. We fight, Kor said, her voice sharp with authority. We don't back down. We show them we are humanity, and we fight for freedom. They moved quickly, springing into action. Blasters fired, cutting through the air as Zyrith soldiers turned the corner. A firefight erupted in the narrow tunnel, echoing through the underground network. The team fought with precision, every shot deliberate. Kor led the charge, moving forward with a relentless drive that kept the soldiers on edge. The battle was brutal and chaotic, but they were making progress. Stay focused, Kor shouted, ducking behind a pillar to avoid incoming fire. The commander is just ahead. Ramirez fired a round at a Zyrith soldier, his face grim as he watched the enemy fall. Almost there, Captain. With a final push, they'd reached the command center. The battle had just begun, but with the Zyrith commander within their grasp, the first strike was theirs. The command center was just ahead, and the Resistance team pressed forward, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the tunnel as they moved swiftly but cautiously. Kor's mind raced with a singular focus. This was their moment. If they succeeded here, it could shift the war in humanity's favor, even if just slightly. Keep moving, Kor barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. We can't afford to waste time. The longer we wait, the more reinforcements they'll bring. Ramirez's voice crackled through her comm. Captain, we've got movement ahead. Several Zyrith soldiers patrolling the corridors. We're not alone. Kor's instincts kicked in. The air was thick with tension. They couldn't allow themselves to be caught off guard now. Her team tightened their formation, weapons drawn, eyes scanning every shadow for potential threats. At the junction ahead, two Zereth soldiers emerged from a side passage, unaware of the Resistance's presence. Kor signaled, and in an instant, her team moved. With brutal efficiency, the Zyreth soldiers were neutralized, their bodies crumpling silently to the floor. No time for hesitation. They pressed forward. As they neared the heart of the command center, the underground passageways began to widen. The flickering lights ahead illuminated the entrance to the Zyreth command chamber, an imposing structure that seemed both ancient and unnervingly futuristic. The walls were lined with alien symbols, and the air hummed with a low metallic sound, as if the very building were alive with energy. Inside, Kor knew, lay their target, General Tor, the ruthless warlord who had led the Zyreth invasion on Earth. "I'll take the left," Kor whispered to Ramirez, her eyes locking onto his. "You cover the right. Once we're inside, take out any guards. We're going for Tor." Ramirez gave a sharp nod. "Understood, Captain." The team split, moving silently through the corridors until they were positioned outside the command chamber. Kor's heart hammered in her chest. She had faced battle before, countless times, but this was different. This time, they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to reclaim their future. With a single gesture, Kor signaled her team to breach the chamber. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a scene that took Kor's breath away. The command center was vast, filled with towering consoles and holographic displays that flickered in alien languages. At the far end of the room stood General Tor, a massive figure clad in black and silver armor, his face obscured by a helmet. His presence was intimidating, even from a distance. He was flanked by several of his elite guards, each one armed with the Zyreth's advanced weaponry. Tar's voice rang out as he turned to face the intruders. "You think you can defeat me?" His tone was deep, commanding, filled with contempt. "I have crushed your kind before. You are nothing." Kor's response was swift, her hand moving to her blaster. "You've underestimated humanity for the last time, General." The air seemed to crackle with tension as the resistance team opened fire, taking out Tar's guards in a hail of blaster shots. The Zyreth elite soldiers fought back fiercely, but they were no match for the combined strength and determination of the human resistance. Kor moved with precision, her shots landing true as she fought her way toward Tar. But Tar was no ordinary Zyreth soldier. He was a warlord, a commander who had tasted victory too many times to be easily defeated. With a roar of fury, he lunged toward Kor, his massive frame moving with surprising speed. He swung a blade, its edge gleaming as it cut through the air. Kor barely had time to react. She ducked, narrowly avoiding the strike, and fired her blaster at his chest. The shot ricocheted off his armor, but it gave her just enough time to close the distance between them. "You will fall, just like the others," Tor sneered, raising his blade once more. But Kor was already moving, her instincts honed by years of combat. She dodged his strike, and in one fluid motion, brought her blaster up to his side. Pulling the trigger, the shot was precise, targeting the vulnerable joints in his armor. Tor staggered, his blade dropping from his hand as his strength faltered. For a moment, the room was still. Tor, gasping for breath, looked down at the wound in disbelief. Kor took a step forward, her eyes never leaving his. "This is the end, Tor," she said, her voice low but filled with unwavering determination. "Humanity will never be your slave." With one final devastating shot, Kor ended the Zyreth general's life, his massive form collapsing to the floor with a thunderous crash. The command center fell silent. Kor's heart was still racing, but she allowed herself a single victorious breath. They had done it. They had taken down one of the Zyreth's most feared commanders. The Resistance had dealt a crippling blow to their enemies. "Mission accomplished, Captain," Ramirez said, his voice filled with awe. Kor glanced around at her team, her mind already moving ahead. The battle was far from over, but this victory was a message to the Zyreth. Humanity would never surrender. They would fight on, no matter the cost. The silence in the command center was deafening. General Tor, the formidable Zyrith warlord, lay lifeless on the floor, and the flickering lights of the command consoles seemed almost eerily muted in the aftermath of the intense battle. The hum of the Zyrith's alien technology was the only sound, a haunting reminder of the price humanity had paid to get this far. Kor stood over Tar's fallen body, her blaster still raised, but her expression was unreadable. She had expected this victory to feel different, more triumphant, but instead it felt hollow. The war was far from won. Even with Tar's death, the Zyrith forces on Earth were still a formidable force, their grip tightening with every passing day. This victory, however significant, was only a small piece of the greater struggle. "Captain," Ramirez said, his voice steady but laced with exhaustion. He walked over to Kor, lowering his weapon. "We've taken the heart of their operation. This could shift the tide in our favor." Kor nodded, her mind already racing ahead. This is only one battle. The Zyrith have many more like Tar. We've disrupted their command structure for now, but they'll adapt. They always do. We've proven they can bleed, Ramirez countered, his tone resolute. That's something they won't forget. Kor's gaze swept across the command center. The remnants of the Zyrith soldiers lay scattered across the room, their once imposing presence now reduced to nothing more than corpses. But her eyes were drawn to the holographic displays, still glowing despite the chaos. There was still information to be extracted. "We need to ensure we destroy this place completely," Kor said, stepping forward. "If the Zyrith recover their command center, they'll rebuild and retaliate with even more force. We can't let that happen." Varian, the Zyrith defector, had been quietly observing the scene from the shadows. He stepped forward now, his alien features tense. "I can help," he said, his voice carrying a gravity that matched the situation. The Zyrith were planning a counteroffensive, but their communication network is still partially intact. "We can cripple their operations for months if you allow me to access the central core of this base." Kor turned to him, considering. "Do it," she said. "We'll cover you." Varian nodded and made his way to one of the central terminals, his fingers flying over the holographic interface with practiced ease. The room grew tense again as the team set to work securing the perimeter and ensuring no further Zyrith reinforcements arrived. As Varian worked, the sound of his hands on the interface filled the room, a rhythmic clicking of keys and a low hum of machinery. It felt like an eternity before he spoke again. "I've accessed their central data hub," Varian said. "I'm uploading a virus that will erase their strategic plans, their operational commands, and all critical military data." Kor glanced at the readout on one of the nearby consoles. The virus was spreading through the Zyrith network, erasing critical files at an alarming rate. "We need to hurry," she said. "The longer we stay here, the greater the chance of reinforcements." "I'm almost done," Varian replied. But then his expression darkened. "There's something else." The Zyrith were planning to deploy a fleet to Earth's moon. They've been building it in secret, a massive shipyard capable of launching devastating strikes. It's not fully operational, but they were preparing to deploy it soon. The gravity of his words hit Kor like a punch to the gut. A Zyrith fleet on the moon. If they succeeded in launching that fleet, it could obliterate any hope the Resistance had of turning the tide of the war. They had to act fast. "Where is this shipyard?" Kor demanded. Varian's fingers flew over the console again, bringing up a map of the moon's surface. "Here," he said, pointing to a hidden facility deep within one of the moon's craters. "If we leave now, we can destroy it before they can launch." Kor didn't hesitate. "We're going to hit them there, hard and fast." Ramirez, gather the team. "We're moving out." Ramirez nodded, his expression grim but resolute. "Understood, Captain." The team quickly gathered their equipment, preparing for the next phase of the mission. The battle for Earth wasn't over, not by a long shot. This was a new kind of threat, one that could tip the scales of the entire war in the Xyrith's favor. But Kor knew they couldn't afford to let it happen. As they made their way out of the command center, Kor's thoughts were already focused on the next strike. They had to stop the Xyrith fleet from ever becoming a reality. It was humanity's only chance. The airlock of their shuttle hissed as it sealed behind them, and the small crew of the resistance team settled into their seats. Kor surveyed her team one last time before they ventured into the unknown. Their mission was clear: destroy the Xyrith's shipyard on the moon. But the path ahead was fraught with danger. She glanced at Varian, who had remained quiet since revealing the existence of the shipyard. Despite his previous defection, there was still a hint of hesitation in his alien eyes. Kor knew it wasn't fear. It was something else, something deeper. The Xyrith had taken everything from him: his home, his family, his people. But would his loyalty to humanity last? Varian, Kor said, breaking the silence. Are you sure about this? If the Xyrith are truly your people, this will be the final cut. Varian's eyes met hers. He didn't flinch or look away. Unsure. The Xyrith Empire is a machine built on destruction and cruelty. I've seen enough of it to know that it must fall. For Earth. For my people. For the future. Kor nodded, feeling a surge of respect. She had trusted him before, and his conviction now gave her the confidence she needed to lead them forward. Then let's make sure we finish this. The shuttle jolted slightly as it shot through the atmosphere, heading toward the moon's surface. Kor's mind worked at a frantic pace, calculating all the possible outcomes. The Xyrith might not be aware of their movements yet, but the clock was ticking. The moon shipyard could be operational within days, and if the fleet launched, humanity's last hope of defeating the Xyrith would be obliterated. There was no room for failure. Ramirez, take the lead when we land. We don't know what kind of defenses they've set up. Stay sharp. Got it, Ramirez said, his voice steady but laced with the anticipation of the coming fight. As they neared the moon, the shuttle's sensors picked up faint traces of activity on the surface. No full-scale operations yet, but Kor's instincts screamed at her. The Xyrith would be expecting some kind of strike. They would be ready. She could already feel the weight of the coming battle pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just another raid or sabotage mission. This was the final act, the last shot at saving humanity from extinction. The shuttle began its descent, the moon's barren, gray landscape sprawling below them. As they neared the designated landing zone, Kor's grip tightened around the armrest. She could see the outlines of the Xyrith shipyard in the distance, a sprawling complex of metallic structures embedded in the moon's rocky surface. It was massive, far more advanced than anything humanity had encountered, and Kor knew that even if they destroyed it, there would be no easy escape. Touchdown in 5, Ramirez's voice crackled over the comms. Kor looked around at her team one last time. You all know what to do, she said. Move fast, hit hard. No one's left behind. We take this shipyard out, or we don't come back. The shuttle landed with a soft thud, and the airlock hissed open. The team sprang into action, weapons raised and ready. Kor led the charge, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of enemy movement. The moon's surface was eerily silent, the ground beneath their boots offering little more than a faint tremor with every step. Ahead of them, the shipyard loomed, its structures gleaming under the harsh light of the distant sun. But something was off. Kor's senses were on high alert. There was a tension in the air, a sense that they were being watched. Ramirez, take point, Kor ordered. Varian, stay close. You'll be our guide through the facility. Ramirez moved forward cautiously, his boots leaving deep imprints in the dust as he advanced. The rest of the team followed in a loose formation, each member keeping their eyes on the surrounding terrain. The shipyard was massive, too massive to be dealt with quietly. The Xyrith would have hidden surveillance, traps, and automated defense systems in place. Kor expected heavy resistance. They moved steadily, closing the distance between them and the first set of towering gates leading into the facility. As they approached, The ground suddenly shook beneath their feet, and a deafening roar echoed through the air. The Zereth had activated their defenses. "Ambush!" Varian shouted, his voice urgent. Without warning, the sky above them lit up as energy blasts streaked across the surface, narrowly missing the resistance team. Kor's instincts kicked in, and she immediately returned fire, her shots cutting through the air toward the automated turrets emerging from the ground. A deadly dance of fire and fury unfolded as the team moved to cover, trying to disable the Zyrith's defensive systems. "Keep moving," Kor shouted. "We can't waste time with these turrets. We need to get inside." The team pushed forward, taking down the turrets one by one, but there was no mistaking it. The Zereth were well prepared for a fight. Their shipyard was not going to fall easily. Kor's mind was locked onto the target, destroying the shipyard before it could launch its fleet. But with every step they took, the sense that they were being drawn into a trap grew stronger. The battle raged around them as Kor and her team advanced through the moon's desolate surface, their footsteps muffled by the constant barrage of energy blasts and the crackle of gunfire. The Zyrith's automated turrets had been disabled, but the shipyard's inner defenses were proving to be even more formidable. The metallic walls of the facility seemed to pulse with life, as though the Zyrith themselves were watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Kor pushed forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to move faster, to finish this before the Zereth could launch their fleet. But the closer they got to the heart of the shipyard, the more hostile the environment became. Alien energy barriers flickered to life, blocking their path, and the very ground beneath their boots seemed to shift as if the shipyard itself was alive, fighting to defend its secrets. "Captain," Ramirez called over the comms, his voice strained. "We're going to need a way through this. These barriers are locking us down." Kor's gaze darted across the shipyard, noting the energy shields surrounding the central command building. They were advanced, far more sophisticated than anything humanity had faced. But Kor had dealt with the Zereth before, and she knew that every defense had a weakness. "Varian, can you hack the shields?" Kor asked, turning to the defector. Varian hesitated for a moment before responding, his voice filled with determination. "I can, but it will take time. The Zyrith have layered security protocols in place." "We don't have time," Kor muttered, scanning the area. The countdown to the Zyrith's fleet deployment was ticking away. Each second felt like an eternity. "Find a way to disable the shields now, or we'll force our way through." Without another word, Varian moved to a nearby control panel, his alien fingers dancing across the console with practiced speed. Kor stood guard, her senses heightened as the sounds of battle echoed around them. Her team was doing their best to keep the Zereth at bay, but it was clear that the resistance they were facing was only a taste of what awaited them inside the command center. "Done," Varian said abruptly, his voice taut with concentration. "The shields are offline." "Move in," Kor ordered. With a fierce cry, the team surged forward, pushing through the now defenseless barrier and charging toward the heart of the shipyard. The command building loomed ahead, its structure dark and foreboding. But the closer they got, the more Kor could feel it, the presence of something huge, something powerful, hidden within the walls. They reached the building's entrance, only to find it sealed shut. Without missing a beat, Kor motioned for Ramirez to plant explosives. Within seconds, the door was blown off its hinges, and the team rushed inside. The air was thick with tension as they moved deeper into the building, their weapons at the ready. Every hallway, every room seemed to be a maze. But Kor's focus remained laser-sharp. The control center was close, she could feel it, and with it, the key to stopping the Zyrith's final hope of retaliation. As they neared the central chamber, Kor's comms crackled to life. "Captain," Ramirez's voice was urgent. "They've initiated the launch sequence. We need to move, now." Kor's pulse quickened. "Varian, can you stop it?" Varian's voice was grim. "I can't shut down the whole system. The launch sequence is already in progress. We need to destroy the main reactor. Kor's mind raced. The reactor was the only thing powerful enough to fuel the fleet's launch, but destroying it would trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. The entire shipyard would go up in flames. There was no time for hesitation. Ramirez, get to the reactor. Kor shouted. Everyone else, cover him. We'll hold off any reinforcements. The team split off, moving swiftly through the facility. As they neared the reactor, they encountered heavy Xyrath resistance. Soldiers in advanced combat suits emerged from the shadows, their weapons blazing with deadly precision. But Kor and her team fought with a desperation born of survival. Every shot they'd fired brought them closer to the reactor and to their goal. When they finally reached the core chamber, Kor's heart skipped a beat. The massive reactor pulsed with a dark, ominous energy, its power crackling in the air. Ramirez quickly set the explosives, his hand steady despite the chaos around him. The countdown began. Get out. Now, Kor shouted. With the charges set, the team turned and fled. But the Xyrath weren't finished. As they raced back toward the exit, the ground beneath them shook violently. The facility's emergency defenses had been activated, and massive blasts of energy began to tear through the walls. We're running out of time, Varian yelled. The team pushed forward with all their remaining strength, the explosive charge just seconds away from detonation. But as they neared the exit, an explosion rocked the building, sending them hurtling forward. Kor's vision blurred, her body slamming against the ground. When she came to, the world was a haze of dust and debris, but she could hear it, the deafening roar of the reactor's explosion. It had worked. The Xyrath's shipyard was no more.